The Zettelkasten Method. What is it and how can you use it to take notes and to write? So I've kept one of these for years, and in this video I'm going to explain how it works and why you need one if you're writing or creating content online. But first, did you know that the legendary comedian George Carlin had a secret weapon for his razor-sharp wit? It wasn't just his talent, he actually had a powerful note-taking system. Now I'm telling you about George Carlin because I've spent dozens of hours figuring out how to take good notes and use them for my writing and for my content. I've tried lots of different apps over the years: Evernote, Notion, Apple Notes, OneNote, Google Keep, Roam Research, Devon Think. The list goes on. And you can even find reviews of how I've used or use some of these apps on this channel. And if you do like the reviews or you do like this video, then don't forget to hit subscribe. Now, I was borderline obsessive about finding a perfect smart note-taking system. And then I discovered the work of George Carlin. For a few months while I was in the gym or out for a long run, I binged on all of his comedy albums, which you can listen to for free on Spotify. And after listening to a few of his albums, I wanted to learn more about where he got his ideas from. So I bought his autobiography, Last Words. I wanted to know how Carlin was able to combine so many observations from media like news, radio, books, plays, history, and combine them with stories from his personal life. And I discovered that Carlin had spent a lifetime writing short and long form notes for himself about politics and pop culture and the pains of daily life in America. And I stumbled across an interview with Vulture. Carlin explained that he'd kept over 1,400 files on his computer. These files contained ideas and notes, data and materials from 44 plus years of reading, writing, researching, performing, thinking and consuming ideas. He said in the interview, "So if I write something down, some observation, I see something on television that reminds me of something I wanted to say already, the first time I write it, the first time I hear it, it makes an impression. But the first time I write it down, it makes a second impression, a deeper pat. And every time I look at that piece of paper, until I file it in my file, each time the pat gets a little richer and a little deeper. So all those things are there." Now Carlin didn't bother with any of the apps that I talked about earlier on. He kept paper-based notes mostly, and he had hundreds of them, and he categorized them by theme, topic, and his random and varying interests. And when he died in 2008, his daughter Kelly found not one, but 3 packed storage units. The storage units were full of notes and observations. Now there's a big difference between George and many serial note takers. He didn't just stuff his notes in the back of a wardrobe or a filing cabinet or a personal journal or some other type of template or digital note-taking system. He didn't just keep notes and forget about them. You see, he'd write a note about something interesting, and then a few days or a few weeks later, he'd rewrite and expand on that note into an observation. He also spent time thinking about how his notes connected to each other, and then he'd start to weave them together and turn them into bits for his shows and for his comedy albums. Now, to the untrained listener, like when I stumbled across him on Spotify, the results sounded like off-the-cuff riffs. But these riffs were months, if not years, in the making. And Carlin actually said, "I'm drawn to something and start writing about it." And then you really start writing, and that's when the real ideas pounce out, and new thoughts and new ideas and images, and then, bada bing, that's the creative part. Now, the National Comedy Center in Jamestown in New York acquired all of Carlin's notes after he died back in 2008. And his estate agent believes that Carlin learned early that a good idea is not any use if you can't find it. Now, Carlin didn't use the specific term Zettelkasten, but his note-taking system was a type of Zettelkasten. And this is something you can easily create with or without fancy tools and software. If you create one, it'll help you write and create content every day without a lot of hard work. Every creator or content creator or writer needs one. There's a reason this system is 150 years old. So let me explain what exactly the Zettelkasten is. Basically, it's a German word for slipbox. And slipbox, that word describes a smart note-taking system. It was developed and popularized by the German sociologist Niklas Luhmann. And keeping a Zettelkasten or slipbox basically describes capturing, revising, and sorting through a series of notes, figuring out how they relate to each other, and turning them into a public-facing work. Think of it as like planting a garden of knowledge in your mind. Now Niklas Luhmann, the scholar that I mentioned, was incredibly prolific like Carlin. He actually published more than 70 books and 400 scholarly articles during his career, and he credited his Zettelkasten system for his extraordinary creative output. Just like a well-tended garden, Luhmann's Zettelkasten grew over time, and after he died, scholars found he had more than 90,000, that's right, 90,000 index cards. No wonder he was able to write so many books. Now George Carlin and Niklas Luhmann are only two examples of creatives who've relied on this note-taking system. I found lots of other examples when I was researching this system. Politicians like Ronald Reagan and the writer Anne Lamott. They all created a habit of recording observations and random ideas and personal anecdotes. Reagan, being a politician, turned his observations into big speeches. Luhmann turned his observations into his books and scientific papers. And Anne has published dozens of fiction and non-fiction works with this type of process. And you can easily do all this if you follow the key principles of the method. So let's break down what those are. First up, create an atomic or short form note. Each one of your notes contains a single idea. Think of it as like a single seed that grows into a tree or a plant. Next, you're going to use a unique identifier or a note title so you can reference or find the idea later on. Some people give their ideas numbers so they can reference them, but I just simply use descriptive headings. Basically, you're labeling different sections of your garden so you know what's what. Next up, you're going to link your notes. So a key principle is figuring out how to connect related notes to form a network of ideas, much like the plants in a garden that support and complement each other. There's lots of ways you can do this. You can use internal linking, you can use software. I simply use hashtags. Other note takers I've come across use timestamps or tags or backlinks. Don't oversweat it, you simply want to know how your notes connect to each other. Now you need to write your notes in your own words. That's because you'll remember ideas and understand them more easily if you've written them in your own words rather than copying something out verbatim. But don't forget to cite your sources. Because if you're reacting to a book or an article or some research, you'll want to put in the link or you'll want to put in the book reference so you can find that source or quotation later on. And you want to keep non-hierarchical notes. Basically, you're organizing your notes based on connections, not categories. So you're letting your garden of ideas grow naturally. This process basically describes writing from the bottom up. In other words, you take notes based on your interests. You're going to allow larger ideas to emerge from all of your random connections. So you might consider how note A relates to note B and note C, and then how note C relates to note A. And to do all this, you need to go back and review your notes. Once a week, go back and go through your older notes in your Zettelkasten system, update them, flesh them out, and consider how they link to each other and whatever it is you're writing or working on. And the most important principle of the Zettelkasten, one I learned from George, is you got to turn your notes into public-facing works. Because you're not looking to create an immaculate library of notes where you can find everything easily. You need to do something with them. That means writing articles or newsletters or books or even videos like this one. Basically, figure out how you can turn your notes, ideas, research and insights into content. Now I've kept the Zettelkasten for a few years and it has a number of key benefits. So first up, it can improve your creative thinking. I found that unexpected connections can emerge kind of like surprising hybrid plants in a garden. If you can see how note A connects to B and C and then how C connects to A, you'll start to see things other people miss. It can also help you improve your understanding of ideas. That's because writing in your own words will deepen your comprehension. It's kind of like getting your hands dirty when you're working on your garden. Basically, you're writing ideas you come across in books and videos and courses in your own words, so you understand what they mean and so you can articulate them to someone else. Another key benefit is it makes content creation easier. If you're turning your notes into articles, speeches, books, or videos, or whatever it is, you're writing from the bottom up. You're writing based on your interests, so you never need to look at the blank page and wonder what's next. And it also helps with knowledge building. Now here's how I take notes like George Carlin. Yes, I use software, but you don't need to pay for any fancy Notion templates or other software or apps, or lose sleep searching for the best note-taking tools. Anyone can build an analog or paper-based system like Niklas Luhmann or George Carlin. Now that said, here's my Zettelkasten process in a nutshell. When I see, read, or think about or consume a piece of content that's interesting, I just write the idea down. I don't assume that I'm going to remember it later on. And I write these ideas down regularly on paper or in the Notes app on my phone, and I keep them all in one place. That way they're easier to find. And to keep them in one place, I review my notes every few days, rewrite them, expand them, and organize them. And I usually write or capture notes about things that interest me. And when I'm editing my notes, I always ask myself how note A connects to B and C and D and so on. I also set myself a goal of turning these notes into something public facing, like a piece of content for LinkedIn, a blog post, an article, a newsletter, or a video. In other words, I don't want to make the mistake of letting all my notes sit on my computer or in my phone or in a notebook. Now, what apps can you use to create your Zettelkasten? Well, like I said earlier, the apps don't really matter. Lumen and Carlin used index cards and paper-based notes and they got on just fine. But if you're going to keep one, here's what I recommend. Keep plain text notes or markdown files on your computer. If you're unsure what markdown is, I have another video on the channel where I do a breakdown into how you can use markdown. If you keep plain text notes or markdown, you can access them anywhere with the latest apps. If you want to use an app, Notion, Evernote, and Apple Notes can all work for this system. But you're locking yourself into these proprietary systems, and that's not something I like doing or something that I recommend. So Obsidian is another good choice for managing your Zettelkasten without locking yourself in. And I have a few videos on the channel where I explain what Obsidian is and how you can use it for your Zettelkasten. But don't worry too much about the app, it's the system that you want to focus on. In short, capture interesting ideas immediately or regularly, whenever you find them. Put all of your notes in one place, you can easily access them. Regularly review and expand upon your notes. Look for connections between different notes so you can cross-pollinate your ideas. And use your notes to create content or to solve problems or to build out your understanding of a topic. If you build this type of system, if you build your personal Zettelkasten, you're far more likely to stumble across old ideas that you've forgotten about. And this regularly happens to me when I'm going through old book annotations. And you'll also find random connections between ideas from different domains, which will help your work sound more original and creative. Now sure, all of your notes and ideas are not going to be usable. Carlin didn't turn his 1,400 plus digital notes and all of those notes from his storage into bits for his shows. But his odd note-taking system was the genesis for his life's work. And that life's work comprised over 14 stand-up comedy show albums, multiple HBO specials and 5 books, as well as dozens of TV and film appearances. By taking and writing notes regularly in your Zettelkasten, you're gradually turning smaller pieces of writing into more substantial works, kind of like a gardener. And you're doing it note by note, idea by idea, day by day. And all of that is much easier than trying to create the perfect note-taking system or publishing a masterpiece. See, the Zettelkasten is a great way to cultivate all of your ideas and research. All you have to do is harvest them and turn them into public-facing works. Public-facing works like articles, blog posts, newsletters, social media content, books, videos, and more. Now, if you still need more help creating your personal Zettelkasten, I've actually created an entire course about it, and I'll put a link to it in the notes below this video. And I do have some other videos on the channel, which I'll include in this playlist, that you can watch if you want to do a deep dive. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have questions about the Zettelkasten method, ask me in the comments section below this video. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this.